With the help of Hashem, we are learning Rosh Hashana Daf Zayin. We're going to continue towards the end of Daf Vav Amid Beis, 3 lines before the bottom of the Amid. We're going to conclude the final inquiry regarding a Bechor, as we learned that a Bechor ideally should be consumed by the Kohen in the year that this animal Bechor was born. And we're going to clarify exactly what does within the year mean. Does it mean from the day of the birth? Does it mean from the day that it is ra'ui to be offered as a carbon, which is from the 8th day and on? On Daf Zayin, towards the beginning of the top, right in the second line from the top of the Amid, after we have concluded the sugya of Echad Benissen is Rosh Hashana L'Regalim, and as we explained that L'Regalim means to the violation of Bal Ta'achar, we're going to learn a brisa that's going to give many other halachas for which Echad Benissen is a Rosh Hashana towards. And as we will see, that Echad Benissen is Rosh Hashana L'Chadashim. Whenever the Torah gives a number to a month, and the Torah only gives numbers to the months, so the first month or the 7th month, well, 7th from what? When the Torah says, we know what means Tishrei. How does it mean Tishrei? Because it's the 7th towards the 4th. The first month is Nisan. So Echad B'Nisan is Rosh Hashana L'Chadashim. Echad B'Nisan, as we will see, is considered the Rosh Hashana Li'iburin. Based in year to year would decide whether to make the year into a leap year. And that decision is somehow connected to Echad B'Nisan, as we'll explain. Echad B'Nisan is Rosh Hashana to the Truma Shkalim, as those of us who learn Masechta Shkalim, that every year, every man was obligated to give a half a shekel. Women were allowed to opt in. And when would they take from the Shkalim and use it for the communal karbanos? When did they first take from the new Shkalim on Echad B'Nisan? Then we're going to have another opinion that holds that Echad B'Nisan is considered the New Year's for house rentals. If a person rents a house and he says, I'm renting the house for this year, not for a year, but for this year, we will see that the year ends on the last day of Adar. Echad B'Nisan is considered a New Year's. So that's already 4 new Rosh Hashanahs. Then we're going to have the concept, not concerning the first day of Nisan, but we're going to see that the 16th of Nisan is Rosh Hashanah for Chadash, as we'll explain. The 6th of Sivan is Rosh Hashanah for the Shtei Halechem, for being allowed to use the Chadash in the Beis HaMikdash, as we'll explain. Bottom line is we're going to find many other Rosh Hashanah days, and we're going to spend Daf Zayin explaining what they mean, and why didn't the Mishnah enumerate them, as the Mishnah does begin, that Arba'a Rosh Hashanah Hein, L'chora, they're going to be more than 4 Rosh Hashanahs. We will also go into a few details concerning the Mishnah, like who is the author of the Mishnah. When we just concluded this topic of Echad B'Nisan is Rosh Hashanah L'Regalim, we explained that is following the opinion of Reb Shimon, because let's say according to Rab Meir, a person violates thou shalt not delay, a person violates Bal Ta'achar immediately after the first regel passed. So the opening of the Mishnah is Rab Shimon. When the second Rosh Hashanah discussed in the Mishnah is regarding when is the New Year's for the tithing of animals. So in the Mishnah we had a machloikis, the Tanach, whose name is not written, says the first day of Elul. But we'll see that that's the sheet of Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Eliezer and Rab Shimon say it's be'echad b'tishrei. So we're going to have a challenge as to discover who is the author of the Mishnah, and all of this would lead us. This will be part of the solution to establish why is it that the Mishnah did not enumerate all of the many other Rosh Hashanahs that we do indeed have. And Chevra, let us start again. Daf Vav Amid Beis, 3 lines before the bottom of the Amid. The last inquiry that they asked regarding this not delaying, and the not delaying also means concerning the Bechor that has to be gifted to a Kohen. And when the Bechor is not blemished, the Kohen has to take it to the Holy Temple and offer it as a sacrifice and then eat those parts that are meant to be eaten by the owner, by the Kohen. So and the Torah says, as we quoted yesterday, Rashi brought a Daf Yomid Beis the pasuk that Lifnei Hashem Elokecha Techlenu Shana B'Shana, it should be eaten in front of Hashem. each year. In other words, the bechar of this year should be eaten on this year. So bechar me'emes haimoin and loishana, from when do you count the year? One of the two options, from the day that it's born or from the day that it is fit to be offered as a carbon. And indeed, this is a machlokes. Abaye says, Mishasha Noilat, from when it's born. Rabbi Acha Bar Yaakov says, from when it's fit to be offered as a appeasement sacrifice. Really, the word appeasement is really used when someone violated a sin and they are looking to find appeasement in the eyes of God Almighty. A bechar is not offered for a sin, but it's a borrowed term that sometimes is used regarding all of the sacrifices. So it sounds like there is a machlokes. Now, when can a carbon be brought? Not only a bechar, like we keep on quoting, the pasuk says clearly that for the first 7 days, an animal may not be offered as a carbon. It's only from its 8th day onwards may it be offered as a carbon from the 8th day. So the year concludes 1 year after it's 8 days old. So comes the Gemara and says, don't think that they argue. Really, they don't argue. V'lei pligi. The one who says, Rabbi Acha Bar Yaakov says, is speaking about a tam. A tam means an animal that's born unblemished, an animal that's fit to be offered as a carbon. And indeed, since it's not fit only until the 8th day, so you only begin the countdown of 1 year from the 8th day. Kap of Dav Zayin. Speaking about a balmum, Rashi clarifies, a balmum means that it's born with its blemish. So the moment it's born, we knew that this animal is not fit to be offered as a carbon, and therefore it has to be gifted to the kohen. But it's not offered as a carbon. But the kohen now also has the same obligation of eating it within a year. But since this animal is fit to be slaughtered, not as a carbon, from when it's born, so the year's countdown begin from when it's born. And the Gemara right away challenges, we spoke this out yesterday, hold on, Balmum mimatzi achalei. I know that the pasuk in the Torah that says you got to wait 8 days, or you got to keep it with the mom for 7 days, and only from the 8th day, that's by a carbon. But there's a din that if an animal is a nafel, if an animal is a non-viable animal, if an animal was not properly developed in the mother's womb and it will not live, that animal is not kosher even if you shecht it. And if you have a doubt whether it's a nafel or not, the rule is you have to wait 7 days. If it survives the first 7 days, that is a proof that it's not a nafel. And whenever there is a doubt, even by a chulin animal, you have to wait until the 8th day. So balmum mi matzi achalei. So the Gemara says, yeah, there are times that even if the animal is blemished, you don't have to wait. When will that be? The second line, the kimle, the owner knows, shekalu, kimle bay, the owner knows regarding the animal, shekalu lechadashav, that the months of its gestation was fully completed. And again, on the Sechtes Bechayres, on page 8, on Daf Ches, that is where we have the record of the teachings of the sages. Which type of animal needs how long of a gestation period? That's the Gemara that's speaking about which creatures are able to blend with each other, even though we're not allowed to do it. So we're not allowed to mix the genes from one species with the other. But when is it possible without using modern technology that if two animals will mate, they will produce together an offspring? So the two klalim were, they have to mate the same way. And number two, that they have to share the same time of gestation. That's where the Braisa spoke about the animals. And if you know that the animal was properly developed for the time needed until the end, full pregnancy, even if the animal is blemished, if it's kachim, b'chlal, you can't bring it if it's blemished. Even if it's wholesome, you got to wait for 7 days. But when it comes to chulin, then you are allowed to shecht it and to eat it right away. And it is in that case that Abaye is saying, Misha shenoilad. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam.
You talking about a mule can be shecht right away?
A mule is not a kosher animal, so it may never be slaughtered right away.
Oh.
You only slaughter animals that are allowed to be eaten. Now, Baruch, if a person will do the act of shechita on a non-kosher animal, I mean, if there's a purpose for doing it, you are allowed to do it. But we don't even use the word shechita because it didn't do anything halachic. It didn't change the status. The animal will be impure. The animal may not be consumed, etc. So, Chevra, we concluded the topic of Bal Ta'ach. But like we mentioned, the whole daf today will point out, beginning with Echad B'Nissen, that Echad B'Nissen for 3 or 4 other dinim will be considered the beginning of something new. We'll have to explain what that means. And then we'll have to explain why doesn't the Mishnah mention it. Simple. So Tanach Rabbanan. Some of what we learned we are familiar with. Some of what we're learning will be new, as it always should be. The Echad ben Nisan Rosh Hashana l'Chadash. Says the Braisa that the first day of Nisan, which is Rosh Chodesh Nisan, is considered the New Year's for the count of months. So, for example, when the Torah says celebrate Rosh Hashana on the 7th month, mark Yom Kippur on the 7th month, celebrate Sukkot on the 7th month, the Torah never uses the words Tishrei. How do we know it's Tishrei? Based on the premise that the first month is Rosh Chodesh Nisan. That's number one. If that's number one, so then you know where to put the holidays in. So the first of Nisan is the Rosh Hashana for the months. Number two, rule number two, li'ibudin. Now we have a fixed calendar. Up until the complete temporary, almost 2,000 years temporary demise of the great Sanhedrin, the final members of the Sanhedrin, right, and the leaders who were known to be Hillel the Minor, they established a calendar until the reconstitution of our great Sanhedrin. But when we have a Sanhedrin, the decision whether to add another month, a 13th month to a year, that decision is made on a yearly basis. And the Braisa is saying that decision is connected to the first day of Nisan. Now the Havamina, which means initially we think it means that on the first day of Nisan, that is when you decide whether the year will be a leap year or not. And we'll see later, it dafke does not mean that. But there is something about the decision about a Shana Me'uberes connected to Rosh Chodesh Nisan. It's a cutoff date to something. Rule number 3, Ula Truma Shkolim. This is something that those of us who learn Shkolim are very familiar with. There's two things, not to confuse one with the other. There is when people donated the new half a shekel. That was done before Nisan, right? They made announcements, be'echad, be'adar, and we learned the whole system in the Masechta Shkolim. But when the Shkolim arrived to the temple treasury in the temple, just because it was there, it wasn't used. When was it the first time? Remember that whole system, the Kohen went in there and he went in there with short sleeves and he didn't speak, or he was speaking the whole time. People should not suspect that he's putting it in his mouth. And he would remove with 3 boxes, Aleph, Beis, Gimel. There's a whole thing we learned in Shkolim, the details, but there was 3 times a year that someone went into the chamber that had the new Shkolim and removed Shkolim for it to be used for the communal karbanos of the new year. When did that happen? Rosh Chodesh Nisan. And the Yesh Oimrim, and number 4, Aflas Schiras Batim. Schiras Batim means for house rentals. Now, when you make a document by a lease and you write, I am leasing this house for a year, then we taich. It means for a full year, 12 months. But if a person writes on a lease document, I'm leasing this house for this year. Oh, what does this year mean? Now, by the way, sometimes in halacha, if you have a doubt what it means, you look at the money that was paid, you look at the market, and you extrapolate, from this amount of money, it must have meant for that amount. You don't do it over here. This year means until Rosh Chodesh Nisan, according to this opinion. So Rosh Chodesh Nisan is the new year for house renters. So again, we have 3 or 4 new Rosh Hashanas. It's pashut. What's the proof? How do we know it? Clarifying what it means. And then, why didn't our Mishnah say? That will be the daf. So, lechadash and minolan. Now we take it as a given. It's amazing how many psukim the Gemara needs to bring to show that Nisan is the first month. Now, you can always argue we have that tradition, of course. Not everything needs to be sourced. We know it means that because if Rosh Chodesh Nisan would not mean the first month, then my father, my Zayda, wouldn't celebrate the Pesach and Nisan, nor Rosh Hashana on Tishrei. And we're doing this forever. But Minolan, where do we find in scripture clear that Nisan is the first month? Look, a big Megillah is coming. It says in Parshas Boy, since in Cheder we always touch it, Nisan, we take it for granted. But when you read this verse, all you see is that this month is the first month. What's this month? How do you know what this month is? From this pasuk, you know nothing. Let's go weiter. So we have to keep on going. But then it says, that whichever month is this month, we were commanded to take on the 10th day of this month. As we know, the first carbon that we brought as Yidden, Ish, Sela Beis Aves, Sela Bois. So every house took a lamb. In other words, it's not a lamb per person because it had to be consumed. And we were told to take the lamb on the 10th day. And we should guard the lamb with all the details. We tied it to our bedposts. Again, until the 14th day of this month. And we have to shecht it on the 14th day. We still don't know from scripture what is the month. But now comes the punchline. Since it says Shomoy, so first, until now we know that on this month we take an animal that is brought as what we call the Koren Pesach. Now it says Shomoy Chodesh Aviv, that we should observe the month of Aviv. The word Aviv means the month of the first ripened produce. Don't touch spring. Of the first, in other words, the first ripened means when some produce becomes fully ripened. The month in where there are certain things that take more time to ripen. As we'll see, certain things only become fully ripened, we'll see in Iyar. But when and there is a very small amount of produce that becomes fully ripened in Aviv. But generally, when do we have the first ripened produce, which is the meaning of Aviv? That's observe the month. And here, it's amazing how the Gemara doesn't even bring the continuation. The whole proof is from what the Gemara doesn't bring. And you know what it says? It says, Shomer Chodesh Aviv. Who knows what it says weiter? Then it says, in that pasuk, Shlomo v'asisa Pesach l'Hashem Alekach. That's the proof. In other words, that we know from the 3 psukim we brought before that Pesach is brought on the first month. It says that Pesach is to be brought in the month of Aviv. Now, Eiz Chodesh yesh by Aviv, which is the month in where we have the first ripened produce. We're looking for produce that's completely ripened. That's important that we know that's Nisan. So now you get it. In other words, now that you see that you bring Pesach in Chodesh Aviv Nisan, and we have again the first Koren Pesach was brought. If it's Nisan, the Torah calls it the first month. That's how you know that the first month means Nisan. So the Gemara has a couple of challenges. First of all, there are certain items, we're speaking about obviously the Holy Land, that only become completely ripened in Iyar. They are the late bloomers, maybe the baby boomers, however you say it in English. The Ema Iyar. So the Gemara says, no. Be'ina Aviv. Aviv also means Av. Av means the first, the beginning. Yeah, there are certain things that only become fully ripened in Iyar, but that's not the first ripened produce. But now the question is that there are certain things that develop quickly. It's in the minority, but there are certain things that are fully ripened in the Ema Other. Or it's theoretically, if we are not using tradition, if we're only using scripture, one can argue Pesach should be in Other, Heshtamaisa, and the whole Yom Tov season should be in Elul. You don't know that. So the Gemara says, now, Be'inan Roiv Aviv. It's only a minority. So the Gemara says, listen, again, if you want to go by tradition, you don't need a proof. If you want to find it from what we should state in the parsha, Mida Roiv Aviv Ksiv, it doesn't say Roiv. Now, Torah al Roiv Tadaber, if you have to pick and choose, it makes more sense. We're not happy with it. It's not a full proof. It's not enough. We're going to find something else. Okay? So, Elo, Amar Abchiz, the Mahachim. Here, and now we're jumping to Parshas Emor. In Parshas Emor, we're going to the month of what we call the 7th month. We're going to go to Sukkot. It says, in the 15th day of the 7th month. Well, and now, listen to this. When you gather the crop of the field. Now, in Eretz Yisrael, being that it does not rain in summer, a lot of the produce, after it was harvested, was left in the fields to dry. It stays it's fresher for much longer. The more moisture, maybe it's geschmack but it rots a lot quicker. As we just learned a lot in Beitza about people dry fruits, people would leave grain in the field to dry. When they gather it in, before there's even a risk of it getting wet. When would it rain in Eretz Yisrael and Mar Cheshvan? So which month would they gather the produce? In the month of Tishrei. That's a fact. So that's L'chayr again the Raya. So the Torah says that the 7th month is the month in which people gather the grains or the crops from their fields. So now you have to go backwards. If Tishrei is the 7th, that means that Nisan is number 1. And maybe it goes to Mar Cheshvan. because the rains only begin to fall in Mar Cheshvan. By the way, Mar doesn't mean bitter. Mar means a drop of rain. Mar Midli, it's a pasuk. People always admit the wrong types. The month of rains. Umay Shvi Le'iyar, and if that's the case, then Chodesh Rishon should be Iyar. Oy Gewalt. So we're doing Pesach on the wrong month. So the Gemara says, no, Be'inan Asiv Veleka, that all the crops, in other words, yes, it only begins raining in Mar Cheshvan. People don't leave it up until the clouds get filled with, the sky gets filled with clouds. So it doesn't work that way. If someone delayed it in Tishrei, Mistama, they can still chaparan in the beginning of Cheshvan. People would gather it in Tishrei. People actually would gather it before Sukkot. That was part of the V'samachta b'chagecha. People would see that now they have gathered all of the brachas that God gave it.
When you say gather, they would cut it? Or
No, very good. Not cutting it. They would harvest it Shavuos time. It's already cut. They would leave it out to dry, and the drier the kernels, then the longer it can stay. It can last for many years. And if there's a drought, you need for it to last. Moisture makes it geschmacken on the moment. It's like a taiva. Taiva, that's why the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, right, that mayim is matzmichim kol mini tainuk, because you get pleasure when something is moist, but then it rots right away. Dry. Okay. Ema, dry from Gashmis, never dry from Ruchmis. The Ema Elul, hold on. Maybe people gather in Elul. And then if Elul is the month of gathering, so then what's the first month? Adar. So here again, we must go that Taka Yishino Chevre, that there were times and there are certain things that are gathered in Elul, but it's a minority of things. But now we got the same problem. It doesn't say Roiv. Oh, answers the Gemara, Be'inan Roiv Asiv Veleke. Frag the Gemara, Mida Roiv Asiv Ksiv. So not you can bring a full proof from Nisan. Not you can bring it from Tishrei. And the Gemara acknowledges, we're not learning any halachas from Nach. But if you want to bring a proof that in scripture, the number 1 means Nisan, the proof won't be from Toras Moshe. It will only be Medivrei Kabbalah. I know it's just to repeat what's known. Never confuse Divrei Kabbalah when you have this word written in Nigla to what we understand the word Kabbalah to mean. When we use the word Kabbalah, we are referring to the secret of the Torah, Torah Sanistar. Whenever Nigla says the words Divrei Kabbalah, it never refers to Nistar. They don't mention anything about the hidden part of Torah. The word Kabbalah means Nevi'im and not Nach. Kabbalah means Nevi'im, not Ksuvim. For some reason, the only sefer of Ksuvim that is called Divrei Kabbalah is Megillas Esther. Just to know, Kabbalah means Nevi'im, and Esther, we're going to learn a Masechtas Megillah, actually a machloikas regarding Megillas Esther. There are certain svarim that they were debated whether it should enter the canon or not. Remember Koheles, Shirashirim, Megillas Esther. We're going to get there in Megillah anyways. Just to know, Divrei Kabbalah means Nach and also Megillas Esther. And here we go. We're going to go back and forth. So first we're going in a pasuk in the beam from Zechariah.
Not Nach.
Thank you, Yaakov. Not Nach. Nish Nach. Very good. Lamadnu, we learned from Nevi'im, thank you. Clearly, it's speaking about something that happened on the 24th day of the 11th month, which is the month of Shvat. Now, by the way, you're always going to find these names in the later Nevi'im, because the names of the months were actually given during Golus Bavel, and which will be the later Nevi'im. The earlier Nevi'im were in Eretz Yisrael before we went into Golus. Okay. It's amazing. We're going from Zechariah to Esther, from Zechariah to Esther. We're going back and forth for some reason. It says, when? Again, the Fedish. Okay, that's it. Once you have a name and a number, okay, if Tavis is the 10th, then Nisan is the first. Count backwards. And Kevin is going to put up a picture for those people who can't count backwards. Rav Kahana, when it says, I'm going to Zechariah, I'm sorry. Yes, back to Zechariah. Lachodesh Hachi, Kislev. Again, Kislev is the 9th, and Nisan is the 1st. Number 4. Here we go. Here we have the picture. And what's Chodesh Hashlishi? Chodesh Sivan. Ravashi Omar, at least we're staying at least in Esther now. Hipul Pur, Hu Agoiro, Lifnei Haman, B'yom L'yom, Chodesh L'chodesh, name Asur Chodesh Adar. So if 12 is Adar, the number 1 is Nisan and the Iboy. Now, all of these psukim that we brought had one thing in common. It was not Nisan, it was another month with a bigger number. Going backwards, Nisan will be the first. There is one pasuk somewhere that says Nisan is one, and which l'chayda should be the best one. It says in Megillah Esther, "B'chaydesh Harishon u'chaydesh Nisan." And this is such a great pasuk. Not that the other ones, there's nothing deficient in the other ones, but it's direct. So why didn't all the others bring this? Kula, my Kama lo yomim. Hi, answers the Gemara Dilma that since we're speaking about the events that happened concerning the terrible gezeros that God made through Haman, Dilma, my Rishon Milsa, because you should know that Haman ascended to power in Nisan. Shortly afterwards, he felt baledik from Mordechay. So maybe in the context of Megillah Esther, he's telling the story about how he made a decree. One could have said, in the first month of the events that brought about these decrees. It's not a full proof. That's why we want to have many other psukim where it says either not Tanach in Nevi'im or in Esther, where there is a name of the month that we are familiar with and a number, and all of them mean that Nisan is Chodesh Harishon. That's the Raya, going back to the Torah, that when the Torah attributes Yomim Tovim to numbers of months, we know from Scripture what month it refers to. Now the final question will be, why didn't our Mishnah, when it says Be'echad B'Nisan Rosh Hashana L'Melachim, before the Mishnah goes on to speak about the Echad Be'elul is Rosh Hashana L'Maisa Behema, the Mishnah should have says V'Lachadash. Answers the Gemara V'Taradidan only Bishanam Komayda B'Chadashim Loi Komayda. Our time is mentioning something that affects the whole year. It affects the whole year. But don't forget, even though the first month doesn't affect the whole year, because you don't have Yom Tov in every month in the year. Yom Tov is not connected to years. Yom Tovim are connected to months. So when the Torah says, B'chodesh Hashvi, how do you know what it means? Taka, from having the first month is Nisan, so you know the seventh month is Tishrei. But it's not something that affects the year. It only affects the months. The Mishnah doesn't have to mention it. Okay, first white line. The second new, so to say, Rosh Hashana. Now the Braisa calls it Rosh Hashana, but say the second Rosh Hashana of the Braisa is Li'iburin. The Havamin of the Gemara is that on Rosh Chodesh Nisan or from Rosh Chodesh Nisan, the Sanhedrin can establish that year as a leap year, and that's not correct. It was never done on Nisan. We learn in the Braisa that you don't decide to make a year into a leap year before Rosh Hashana. We call Rosh Hashana meaning Echad B'Tishrei. You don't do that. Even if the Sanhedrin knew, they don't deliberate. They don't say that, and the reason is because no one had a physical calendar, right? So if they would make that decision, the only month that you add is Adar, first of all. You don't add any other month. So if you are not within at least the second half of the year vis-a-vis Adar, people might forget. It's too far away. That's the pshat. And not only that, it's not only a lachatchila, it's a b'diavad. It's essential. Second wide line, ve'imi brua enim oberes. Imagine the Sanhedrin, they deliberated with all of the complex calculations of astronomy that they have to know, including other reasons that one is allowed to take into account. And they made a decision, it's garnished. And not only that, ideally, all of this should be done as close to Adar as possible. But we tolerate Avol Mepnei Adchak if there's a pressing reason. For example, there's rules that you need to have the Nasi of the Sanhedrin present when these deliberations and the decision is made. What happens if the leader of the Sanhedrin needs to make a trip? What happens if the Romans are already pushing back against the whole institution of the Sanhedrin and their gathering together is very difficult? Or other pressing reasons why they don't want to wait until the end. So then if you have to move it back, that's the closest. Okay. When is it the ideal time? Even when they make that deliberation, they don't add 2 Tishreis. That would be amazing, huh? They don't add 2 Cheshvins. The only month that you add is the month of Adar. Bottom line is that Rosh Chodesh Nisan is not the month in which you can make that decision, nor those deliberations. So the Gemara clarifies, the meaning of the Braisa, Iburim means Hafsakas Iburim, that the culmination. In other words, until when can they deliberate? Until when? Not from when. If it's the 29th of Adar, and for some reason they say, oops, guys, we have to add an Adar, they can still do it. The only time that they can no longer decide the year will be a leap year is once today is declared Rosh Chodesh Nisan. Once it's Rosh Chodesh Nisan, you can't say, oh, no, let's make it another other. So it's really Echad B'Nisan is not the beginning, but it ends. It cuts off the ability of making the other into two others, which means a moment before Rosh Chodesh Nisan, up until the 29th of Adar.
How would that work after Purim?
How would that work? They would make an announcement and people will have to find out about it. Now, by the way, this is subject to a machlekes. There's a chiddush here. As we will learn in a moment, that some Tanoim felt that the latest you can make the year into a leap year is up until Purim. And after Purim, you may no longer make the year into a leap year because people, we'll read this, I'm saying it by heart, but we'll have in a few lines, that Israel and V'dorshim Milchas Pesach, Shloshim Yom Kedem HaChag, we had this in Pesach. So people imagine you're going to a shir and you're hearing from your Rav the halachas, and when he says in 30 days from now, or in 29 days from now. And then they're gonna a shliach of the Sanhedrin will come and say, no, Pesach is erst in a month. You'll have to pick between listening to a shliach. The shluchim of the Sanhedrin were not the greatest scholars, they were just shluchim, they were just messengers. Or your Rav, you're gonna listen to your Rav. But we don't go that way. The Tanan, as we learn, and this is a Mishnah in Eiduyois, Hain, we just had them a few daf ago. That's Rabbi Yeshua and Apapayas. They hold that not like the others who say you can only decide and add the leap year up until Purim. They testified, no, Shema Abram Hashanah Kol Adar. Shahoyu Oimrim, others said, no, only until Purim. And our Braisa is siding with the Haim, with Rabbi Yeshua, with Rapapayas. No, that Rosh Chodesh Nisan is the cutoff. Up until Rosh Chodesh Nisan, you can still make that other into that was only Adar Aleph. By the way, that would be amazing. That means you celebrated proper Purim. You mamish made Purim. Nacha Purim, Amachai. My time in the Manor Purim. Why did the others hold until Purim? Because even the Amar Mar, we have this rule, right? We have this in Pesach, we have this in Megillah, we have this in Sanhedrin. That Shoyle Bilchas Pesach Koydem Pesach Shloshim Yoim. And by the way, many people hold only Pesach needs 30 days. It has the most complex halach. Shavuos doesn't need 30 days. There's a big argument about it. Be that as it may. So they were afraid that if people are already hearing from their Rav, Hilchos Pesach, Asi Lil Zilzulei B'chametz, like Rashi speaks out, as we just 9 lines before the bottom. They heard from their Rav, not theoretical dinim. They heard Hilchos Pesach. The Rav was already saying it's going to be in 4 weeks, it's going to be in 3 weeks. Then a shliach based, and they're going to say, you don't know what you're talking about. I heard from my rabbi it's in 3 weeks. However, v'idach, but the reason why Rav Yeshua, why Rav Papayas, why the Braisa, they have no such concern, because Meida Yediyah, everyone knows, the Rav doesn't know whether they're going to make the year into a leap year or not. They understand that the Shata Ma'aborto, that making the year into a leap year is B'chushbana Talia Milsa. It's not about scholarship and halachas. It's about making certain calculations really that were only given over to the Sanhedrin. And V'savri, they'll understand if a shliach based and tells them, guys, I know the Rav was darshaning for 2 weeks about Pesach. It ain't happening in 2 more weeks. It's going to happen in 6 more weeks. They know that even that the Chachamim and the Sanhedrin did not make the calculations until. And again, the question is, why didn't our Mishnah mention that Echad B'Nisan is Rosh Hashana Iburin? So the Gemara says, we are counting rules where the first day of Nisan is initiating something, not ending something. But if there's a date that culminates or ends or closes a door, that's something that our Tana did not mention. Next, the third Rosh Hashana mentioned in today's Braisa is Chavre L'Trumas Shkolim. When did the Kohen go into the chamber of the Nushkolim and remove the Nushkolim or some of them to buy the current Karbanos Tzibur on Rosh Chodesh Adar? So first of all, Minolan, how do you know? B'chlal, there's a concept of giving the Karbanos, buying the Karbanos from the new shkolim. Now, we're not asking, how do you know that the shkolim needs to be given every year? We're asking, how do you know that you have to buy the communal Karbanos dafker from the new shkolim? That Omar Rabbi Yoshe, guys, we had this in shkolim. Omar Kra, Pasuk and Pinchas, Zois Oilas Chodesh B'Chachoy. This is the oila of the new moon at its renewal. Hashanah, for the months of the year. Now, what we are focusing is on the fact that the Torah mentions in one little verse the word Chodesh 3 times. Chodesh, Bechachay, Lachachay. So we're going to make a drush, we're going to expound it to say that Amra Torah Chadesh. Chadesh means renew the sacrificial service. What's that renew? We're doing the same thing. Timidim Kesidrim, every day is the same time. And it means for Have Karbon Mitruma Chadasha, renew it. Renew it. We're speaking here about the first month. Renew on Nisan. From now on, you bring from the new Shkalim. Now, how do you know it's Nisan? So the Gemara says, because we have a Gzeir Shava, Shana min Nisan. It says, Vishenu L'Chachay Hashana, as we already learned today. And it says in this pasuk, L'Chachay Hashana, so it must be Nisan. Frek the Gemara, what are you kidding me? Shana only means Nisan. We have the word Shana used in the Torah in reference to Tishrei. V'likmar Shana Mitishrei D'chsiv Mereishis Hashana. Right? V'adach Shana. So answers the Gemara, if you have two options to where to compare a word towards, use to that which it is more similar and not less similar. And how is it more similar to the verse that you have regarding the month of Nisan? Because in that verse, the Torah both uses the words year and it uses the words month, as we have in the portion of Pinchas. In the pasuk Mereishis Shana v'Ad Shana, the Torah never writes the word month. Danen Shana Sheyesh Im Chadashim, Mishana Sheyesh Im Chadashim, because it's more similar to Ein Danen Shana Sheyesh Im Chadashim, Mishana She'ein Im Chadashim, which is the reference, which is the pasuk Mereishis Shana v'Ad Shana. Okay.
So there's two extra chadashim. There's only one name for that.
There's two extra chadashim. What do you mean by that? Yeah. Chadesh v'havi karbon mitruma chadash. Correct. Yeah. It's only two. It's two chadashim in the drasha from a three chodesh. Very good. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel. I want you to know that karbanos tzibur, the communal karbanos. We're going to speak a little bit about this din about the shkala. Haboim be'echad menisan. The ones that come from the first day of Nisan, beginning with the morning tamid, true, as we just learned, mitzvah l'havim min ha'echadash. You should bring it from the new shkalim donations. But if you didn't, v'im hevi min ha'yashan yatsa. Don't think it's a essential. It's only a lechatchil. Elo shechisar mitzvah. And indeed, even though that initially we did not find this in the works of Tanoim, so we had it in the name of Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel, but then 3 lines from the bottom, Tanya Nami Yachi, we found the Braisa. Karbanis Sibor Haboim Be'echad B'Nisan, it's a mitzvah lavim in HaChadosh, but v'imid min ha'yashan, yatsa elo shechitza mitzvah. Another detail about communal karbanis, that if you have a yachid, she'isnadev mishaloi, that he made a donation for the community, for a communal karban, and they brought it, kshedim, but make sure that he really transferred his money to the public, because it has to be public carbon. Does it have to come from the shkalim? Ideally, but even if one yachid gave all of it, as long as he gave it over properly, pshita, not so pshita. One might have thought that even if he gives it over properly, he really never gives it over properly. I'll explain to you something. If I'm giving something away and I know that it's not going to be mine, then I gave it away. If I'm giving something to you, but I know that I'm benefiting from it, don't forget the carbon sibur is also brought from me. You verstehst? So when I give it and I know that I'm benefiting from it, so one would have argued, I never fully give it away because I know it's not fully away. No, I know the din. It has to belong to the community, and then it covers my obligation as a member of the community. Maybe you did not really give it, like we mentioned. Didn't give it, meaning Rashi says you didn't give it with all of your heart, not because you're stingy, no, because you know it's coming back to you. I'm giving it, but it's coming back to me. I'm not really giving it. No. That as long as the person says that I'm giving this over to the community, that's also b'di'evet good to be used for a communal carbon. Now, the Tana Didon, why didn't our Mishnah mention that Echad Nisan is Rosh Hashana for the Trumas Hashkalim? So answers the Gemara. Now we already gave the answer. We had Shmuel. Then we have the Braisa that b'di'evet, if you didn't use the new Shkalim, you're good. Kivan the Tani imhevi yatsa. So therefore, it's not an absolute rule. It's only a lachatchila dika rule. So that's why the Mishnah didn't mention it. The big question on this answer of the Gemara is that what's the next Rosh Hashana in the Mishnah? Machlokes echad be'elul, echad be'tishrei. It's l'trumas ma'aser. Not everyone. The Rambam, we learn Rambam. The Rambam writes that Yero'eli, whenever the Rambam writes Yero'eli means it's not explicit. that if a person was ma'asir behemus mishana lechaverta, b'di'evet it's good. So all of the Mefarshei HaRambam challenged the Rambam from our Gemara. It's our Gemara saying the reason why our Mishnah didn't mention it is because the Mishnah is only mentioning things that are absolute. According to the Rambam, the Rosh Hashana l'maiser be'em is oichet, not absolute. Okay, just pointing out the question. Now, next, the fourth that we had on the Baraisa, we still have two more to go that we didn't mention yet. Let's get moving. The Yesh Oimrim, that the Rosh Echad B'Nisan or Rosh Chodesh Nisan is considered the new year for house rentals or for the rental of houses. L'schiras batim, what does that mean? Let's clarify. Tonu Rabbanan, Hamaskir Bais Lechaveiroi, and in the contract of the lease they write for a year in English, or in the Holy Tongue they wrote Lishana. Lishana has no Rosh Hashana. Lashana means for a full year. Full year means what's today's date? Today is Vav Mar Cheshvan. Then the renter gets to stay there until the 5th of Cheshvan, a full year, until today's date. And by the way, if there's a leap year, that's the whole question. Say it. But here we go. In such a case, Lashana, I don't know, there's no question by a leap year. It's a full year until the date. But if in the contract they wrote Lashana Zu, they didn't write for a year, they wrote for this year. Says the Braisa, Filu loy amad ela be'echad ba'adar. Even if the contract was written only on the 1st of Adar. Now, not after the 1st of Adar. We'll say that in a moment. But even if it's the first day of Adar, Kivin Shegiah Yom Echad B'Nisan, also Lashana. The year is up on Rosh Chodesh Nisan. Now, the problem is, we mentioned this in the intro, hold on. If the current market is here in LA, I don't know, $10,000 a month for rent, if you're lucky, I'm just kidding, we're not there yet, but we're getting there quickly. If there's a market price for the number per month, so why don't we extrapolate from the money that was agreed to how many months? And many times in halacha, we say the concept of damim moidiin, the money will shed light. So Tosfos says that the word Shana Zu is so powerful, that even, let's say they wrote the contract on the 1st of Adar, and we're saying Shana Zu means this year ends, Rosh Chodesh Nisan is like the new year. The guy gave 30 grand, and it's only 3 grand a month. So we must say that the other $27,000 was either a gift or a loan. Tosfos says that. In other words, there's going to be a din Torah about the other $27,000. Right? What's the difference between
a year and this year?
Of course, because this year means I'm pointing my finger. I'm saying this year.
But when you're writing a lease and a guy's moving in, he's not moving in 2 years. He's moving in now for a year.
No, but for how long? No, it's for how long? People used to pay rent once a year. All the stories of the Baal Shem Tov, people got thrown into jail, all came because you didn't pay rent once a month. In other words, you're writing for, is it for a year means for the whole year. This year means no, this year.
And if it's a leap year, the guy got a free month?
Yes, he did. He didn't get a free month. It means he's paying less rent per month. Yes. Okay. Now, let's go back there. Now, hold on a second. If this year means until Rosh Chodesh Nisan, I have a kasha. Why don't we say that if the lease was written on the 29th of Adar, they only get to live there for 1 day? Well, that we don't say. What's even interpreting this year means Rosh Chodesh Nisan is the new year, is another year, is the next year, but it has to be be'echad ba'adar. Does that mean that we don't say that Yom Echad L'Shana Chashav Shana? We had this on that base. So the Gemara says, not in this context. Even Bafilu L'Man Amar, for other areas in law, in halacha, that 1 day of the year is sometimes considered an entire year. Like, for example, Rosh Hashana L'Mulachim, we just had this earlier on. However, Shana Hache, when it comes to a person moving into a new house as a lease, a person is not going to trouble himself to schlep and to move into a house for less than 30 days, unless you explicitly know that's the case. But normally that's not the case. Now, by the way, that would just mean that according to this, that if a person writes a contract, let's say on the 15th of Adar, Shushan Purim, and they write, I'm leasing this house for this year. You know when the lease would be over? Next year, Rosh Chodesh Nisan. It would be more than a year. Okay, let's go back there. First of all, the whole daf is very orderly. Okay, first of all, how do you know it? Then why didn't the Mishnah mention it? Now, why are you saying that this year means the cutoff Rosh Chodesh Nisan? Why don't we say this year would mean, you ask a Yid without learning today, he'll tell you, I don't know, this year in Tafshan Pei Beis. And which turns, Tafshan Pei Gimel is Echad B'Tishrei. Be'ema Tishrei. So the Gemara gives a gavaldik thing. That Stam Ki Agar Inish Beisa, when a person is leasing a house, do you know when a person wants to be in a house more than any other time of the year? Winter. People, in other words, what are you telling me? If Rosh Hashana would mean Echad B'Tishrei, so you would tell me that if someone leases a house, Echad Be'elul, and they write for this year, they're going to move out Tishrei. No one wants to move out Tishrei. People want to get settled for the winter, not to be displaced right prior to winter. Ki agar inish beisa lokulu yemaisag shamim agar. Okay, and therefore it's logical that the cutoff when you'll have to leave is before spring, not before fall. Why the Tanach? Tanakama means even this Braisa, it's only a Yesh Emrim. And the Tana Braisa and our Tana, why did they not mention this Rosh Hashana? And this is a Rosh Hashana. This is not months, this is a year. Because Benisan Nami Mishkach Shchiach Kitrei. In the month of Nisan, sometimes it's cloudy, Rashi says. Therefore, they hold. Chevra, listen to this. And so Paskins the Shach, that if you write a contract, even Be'echad Ba'adar, you don't want to move out Echad B'Nisan. Echad B'Nisan, sometimes the coldness, the cloudiness, the miserable weather that you have in New York, winter, goes all the way into Nisan. Gewaltig.
So that means like before, like Koftes Shvat, when is the cutoff?
So actually, because of this, we paskin, like our Mishnah, the Shach paskins, that Echad B'Tishrei is the cutoff point. With the exception, in other words, he writes that if you lease a house be'echad be'adar, the Shach says, you know when you have to move out? Echad b'tishrei. And that's a big topic. That's also winter. Well, let's leave it, let's push it, it's late. The best thing is, just to avoid all confusions, is to be more specific when you write a document. To write the beginning date, to write the end date, berachel bitchat tana, as we say, and then you avoid all these issues. Okay, now we are moving on to the second Rosh Hashana, even though, like we mentioned, we're still going to question more about other Rosh Hashanas that are not mentioned. The second Rosh Hashana mentioned in our Mishnah is Be'echad Be'elul Rosh Hashana L'maaseh Behem. So first of all, there's a mitzvah to separate the 10th of each animal that is born to one's behemois in the category of kosher. So it's cattle and sheep and goats, and you have to separate the 10th. They belong to the owner, but they have to be brought to Yerushalayim, to the Beis HaMikdash, and offered as a carbon. And we compare Meiser Behema to Meiser Dagan, just like when it comes to the Meiser, all of the tithings that we do to produce, you're not Ma'aser Mishana Lechaverta. The same thing by Meiser Behema, at least according to the Rambam, Lechatchila, you're not Ma'aser Mishana Lechaverta. Now, how do you count a year? From when the animal was born? But which animals are in which year? This year, according to this Tana without a name, it's the first day of Elul. And then the Mishnah says that Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon hold Be'echad B'Tishrei. Machlokes. So who is the author of the Be'echad Be'elul? We know it's Rabbi Meir. We know it from a Mishnah. Guys, it's not a Detanya, it's a Detnan. There's a Mishnah in B'chodesh that says clearly, Rav Meir Omer Be'echad Be'elul Rosh Hashana L'maaseh Behem. And we're going to, God willing, learn tomorrow why are they arguing. It's based on verses. We'll get there, God willing, on Daf Ches. Now, the Gemara is pointing out the following. When we had a line prior in the Mishnah that the Echad B'Nisan Rosh Hashana Lira Golim, right? Vilora Golim. Who was that? We learned it was only Rav Shimon. It was not Rabbi Meir. Why was it not? Because according to Rav Meir, when one regel goes by, you violate Bal Ta'acha. And it's not even the Chachamim of the Braisa, right? It's only Rav Shimon that says 3 to Golim and Kisidron. Hold on. Amos Seifa, regarding the second Rosh Hashana Meiser Behema, the second opinion is Rabbi Elazar Rav Shimon Omer Be'echad B'Tishrei. Who is the Tanakama of Meiser Behema? Rav Meir. You understand? It doesn't fit. So Reish Rav Seifa Rav Shimon Mitziyasa Rav Meir answers the Gemara Amri Amar Rav Yosef. No, the Mishnah is not Rab Shimon, the Mishnah is not Rab Meir. The Mishnah is authored by Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, by Rebbe. Rebbe opined in some areas like Rab Shimon and in other areas like Rav Meir. Rebbe he, the Nasav Law, and he formulated the Mishnah, Aliyah de Tanoi. In other words, since regarding Regalim, Rebbe himself cited in the 5 or 6 way Machlekes Tanoim, like Rab Shimon, Balta Achad is only after 3 Yom Tovim passed, with Pesach being the first. So then he Echad Benisan is Rosh Hashana l'Regalim. U'maiseh behema savar ki Rav Meir. Now, I know that when we learned above, we touched, the Gemara was asking l'Regalim, why is it a l'Regalim Echad Benisan? Why isn't it the 15th? So we explained the answer of the Gemara above, as we'll have soon, according to one opinion, that even Echad Benisan is considered the Rosh Hashana for Regalim, because the Yom Tov of Pesach, which de facto was on the 15th, is somehow included in Rosh Chodesh because it's the head of the month. That's the way we touched the Gemara correctly. Now the Gemara, the one who asked the following question, is going on the premise that Regalim's Rosh Hashana is Taka the 15th. Now, how is he even able to understand the Mishnah that way if the Mishnah writes there are 4 Rosh Hashanas? The moment you count Regalim to the 15th of Nisan, you're going to have 5 Rosh Hashanas, right? Echad b'Nisan is Rosh Chodesh l'Malachim, Hashanah l'Malachim. Then the 15th is Regalim. Then you're going to have Echad be'Elul. You're going to have Echad be'Elul, Echad b'Tishrei, and either Echad b'Shvat or Tu b'Shvat. It's 5. Up until now, he had no such problem. Why not? Because he didn't think that the Mishnah is authored by Rebbe. The Mishnah is either Rab Meir or Rab Shimon. Now it fits. According to Rab Shimon, there's only 4. Because according to Rab Shimon, you take out Echad be'Elul. According to Rab Meir, that you have Echad be'Elul, you take out the 15th of Nisan, because there is no 3 Yom Tovim Kesidrim from Al Ta'ach. So prior to saying that the Mishnah is Shitas Rabbeinu HaKadosh, he understood that Regalim is the 15th. But silent Rav Meir, silent Rav Shimon, you only have a total of 4. But now that you're telling me that the Mishnah is authored by Rebbe, and Rebbe holds a little bit like this, a little bit like that, so according to Rebbe, you have 5. Echad b'Nisan, Tezvav b'Nisan, Echad be'Elul, Echad b'Tishrei, and either Echad b'Shvat or Tu b'Shvat. That's the kasha. Answers the Gemara. Amar Rava, what the Rebbe meant to write is 4 is the minimum, at least 4. The Divrei Hakol. Rebbe Taka has 5. Ganalpi Chasidus. Rebbe means Rebbe. Our 5th is Yutas Kislev. But the pshat here is no. There is a minimum of 4, according to Rav Meir, like we explained. Why do you have 4? Why not 5? Because you have Echad be'Elul. Yeah, you have Echad be'Elul, but you don't have Tezvav Nisan, because Dal Regalim, he takes out. There's no Regalim. Balta Achad is after any one, the first Regel. According to Rab Shimon, you also only have 4. According to this opinion in the Gemara, 1 will be the 15th of Nisan, but you take out Echad be'Elul. Now, Ma'aser Behema has a Rosh Hashana, but it's Echad b'Tishrei for many other things that the Mishnah already mentioned. That's answer number 1. Answer number 2 is like we said above. Rav Nachman Yitzchak Amar, Arba Chadoshim. No, the Mishnah is only speaking about the months. We are focusing on Rosh Chodesh. The fact that in 1 month, which is in the month of Nisan, you have 2 Rosh Hashanas, doesn't make it a larger number. Ubahen, if you unpackage the month, yeah, Echad b'Nisan is Rosh Hashanah l'Malachim. Tezvav b'Nisan is Rosh Hashanah l'Regalim. But it's still 4 months. And now the Gemara is going to challenge both answers. If the Mishnah is giving a minimum number, or if the Mishnah is giving you the beginning of the months, here's a chaim, meisvei, what's the kasha? We have another Braisa that enumerates 2 more Rosh Hashanas, and that's the end of the Suddah. What's the 2 other Rosh Hashanas? Simple. Shisha Asar b'Nisan, on the 16th of Nisan, Rosh Hashanah lo'omer, meaning that all of the produce that grows in Eretz Yisrael, and according to many opinions, that grows anywhere in the world, may not be eaten. It's called chadash. From when are you allowed to eat it? Either when there's a temple standing, from when the Karban Omer is brought, and it's brought on the 16th of Nisan, or biblically, Mishaheir HaShachar. Biblically, guys, we had this before. And then the takana, since the temple might be built any moment, then it's until the end of the day. But it's connected to this. So the 16th, the Karban or the day allows you to eat Chadash. Who's you? You and me. But you know something amazing? other than the barley itself that came from the new crop used for the Omer, in the holy temple, there were many karbanos that were made out of flour. Many karbanos made out of flour. In the Beis HaMikdash, you were only allowed to bring karbanos from the Chadash flour, from the Chadash crop, after the Shtei HaLechem was brought. So just like Omer is Matar Chadash everywhere in the world, the carbon Shtei HaLechem that was brought from the new wheat was Matar all of the grains, all of the Chadash to be used in the Beis. Now, de facto in the Beis HaMikdash, you didn't use them. You only used wheat, and there are two exceptions of barley, but just remember that. So you have two more Rosh Hashanahs. The 16th is Rosh Hashanah, is Omer. And the 6th of Sivan is Rosh Hashanah L'Shtei HaLechem. So now the Gemara fears Ois the Kasha. If Rava is saying that our Mishnah is mentioning the minimum, the least, so the Mishnah should have said 6, because we just added 2. No, Rava doesn't care about mentioning only that which is on Rosh Chodesh. If you don't care about Rosh Chodesh, then according to everyone, you have at least 6. And according to the Rava Yitzchak, you should have at least 5, because according to the Rava Yitzchak, even though the 16th of Nisan is another Rosh Hashanah, but he's only mentioning the months. Fine. But you know what? No one in the Mishnah mentioned anything regarding Sivan. If you are mentioning months, which month has in it a Rosh Hashanah, then he should have added at least 1. So here, for this, we have a few answers. So, Amarav Papa, Kiko Chashev, Midi, the Chayil Ma'urta. The Mishnah is only counting Rosh Hashanahs that begin at night. Mida, the Loy Chayil Ma'urta. Something that does not begin at night. In other words, the carbon oimer is brought during the day. The Shtei HaLechem is brought during the day. Loy Kachashiv. Fragt die Gemara, Vaharei Regolim. The Loy Chayil Me'urta and yet the Kachashiv. The Havamina is that Balta Acher is connected to the time of the day when you can bring a carbon. And what time of the day can you bring a carbon? Only after Tamid Shal Shachar, right? The Asay of Hashleim. Allah Hashleim Kol. You can only bring carbonis, in between the morning Tamid and the after Tamid. I know parenthetically there's the exception of Pesach, you have an exception of Mechusar Kippurim, we have the Samsachim, but the Havamina is that Balta Acher is connected to the time that you can bring it. So answers the Gemara, and we will interpret the answer according to Tosfos. And we spoke this out yesterday. You know when you violate Balta Acher? If an entire Yom Tov went by. What does that mean, an entire Yom Tov? That if Tosfos says a person made a vow not on the 17th of Nisan, which is the example we gave. If you made a vow, it's the 15th of Nisan, the night of the Seder, at night, but it's already after it says. It's already in Yom. It's 1 hour, it's 9 p.m. And I make a vow to bring a carbon. Since that Yom Tov is not a whole regal that went by after my vow, it's not even counted for 1. In other words, the count of Balta Acher begins at night. How does it begin at night? Not that you violate it at night. Tosfos says you violate it when the Yom Tov concluded. But when you say that you need to have 3 entire Yomim Tovim, lit up Shimon, 3 entire means the vow needs to be made before night, and now it's night. Who cares about night? You can't bring a carbon at night. No, it's mi'urta. Answers the Gemara, Kivon Shutzarach Lasoi Meikara, Mechayev, like we just interpreted the way Tosfos says. That's mamish at the end of the second to last Tosfos. So it's considered a Rosh Hashanah connected to the night. Hold on. Yovel is one of the Rosh Hashanahs that Echad B'Tishrei affects. The Havamin of the Gemara is that the rules of Yovel begin when the shofar is blown on Yom Kippur, and it's blown during the day. Answers the Gemara that our Tana follows Rabbi Shmuel ben Bruker. The Amar, we're going to have this, we're going to have this soon, that all of the dinim of Yovel begin from Rosh Hashanah, not the blowing of the shofar, and at night. Okay, that's answer number 1. Why our Mishnah didn't mention 4 or 5. Answer number 2. Rav Shisha bereid Rav Idi Amar. Kiko Chashav Midi, our Mishnah is only counting Rosh Hashanah as the Tali B'Maisa, the Loi Tala B'Masa, that they're not contingent on someone doing anything. The day came, it's Rosh Hashanah. No matter what. However, both the Omer and the Shtei HaLechem, they are Rosh Hashanahs from when you bring it. Got to do something. But neither the Tali B'Maisa like a Chashav. Again, the Gemara is asking the same Havamin and the same Askana. Regolim, neither the Tali B'Maisa like a Chashav, because the Havamina is that the Balta Acher is connected somehow to after the carbon Tamid was brought. And then the Tamid Shel Ben Arbaim is brought and you still didn't bring it, then you violate it. So it's connected to our bringing of karbanos. So the Gemara says, no, it's not true. Balta Acher Memela Chayil, like we explained in Tosfos. Malta'achar has to do the passing of Yom Tov. And Daf Ches, let's go to the top. Again, the Havamina is that it depends on the blowing of the shofar of the base and on Yom Kippur. So the Gemara answers the same answer that our Mishnah follows Rabbi Shmuel, the son of Rabbi Yechon ben Broikehi, that holds that all of the rules of Yovel kick in the beginning of Rosh Hashana. Answer number 3, Rav Ashi Amar, that our Mishnah did not count the other 2, Arba'a Rosh Hashanim Shehem Ba'arba Rosh Chodashim. We're looking not only for 4 months, we're looking for Rosh Hashanahs that begin on Rosh Chodesh. Gavaldik. Shisha Besivan is not Rosh Chodesh. Tez Zayin is not Rosh Chodesh. Now the problem is that our Mishnah only counts those Rosh Hashanahs that begin on Rosh Chodesh. I got a problem. Because we normally don't formulate a Mishnah only like Beis Shammai. The final Rosh Hashanah of the Mishnah, which is Rosh Hashanah Le'ilanos, it's a machloikes Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, Ulaliba de Beis Hillel, it's Tezvav, it's Tu B'Shvat, not Echad B'Shvat. So fragt die Gemara, Be'echad B'Shvat, ki Beis Shammai, Bitmiya. If you're only counting, that means it's only, so the Gemara says, Enechanami. What the Mishnah really means to say is, Shloi Shala Divrei Hakol, and the Echad B'Shvat, machloikes Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. These are the 3 answers. Now we concluded why the Mishnah doesn't count them. And God willing, tomorrow we're going to begin learning about the Echad B'Tishrei is Rosh Hashanah from many, many dinim.
Very clear.
There's no way to fix the Balta'acher with any tashlumin or something like that?
So what we learned, Jonathan, is that
you can still bring it.
You fix it by bringing it, which means you're probably not going to get Malchus, but you violated Balta'acher, and you need to fix it.
You still violate it, either way.
Still violate it.
That's right.